how do you see the role of media in shaping public perception regarding the awareness of refugee issues in Uganda, but also what are some of the key challenges with regards to accurately reporting public perceptions?
All right, thank you, Adriana. Yes, obviously, media's biggest role is to create awareness. As a person working with media that has had the privilege of working in communities with refugees through organizations and implementing partners like LWF, I've had the privilege to experience their immense resilience, but also their incredible challenges. Now, when you look at Uganda, for instance, we are the largest hosting country on the continent, the 6th in the world. Now, that's such a staggering responsibility for any nation. What the media needs to do is to educate the people that are not necessarily direct stakeholders within refugee settings about the refugee crisis and the needs thereof. Many times, when you look at even the host communities where these refugees are staying, they don't have such adequate information about the situation that surrounds them. But it is critical that we understand, one, as human beings, that anybody is potentially a refugee at any given point. None of them chooses the circumstances in which they find themselves. But how do we then educate the people that are not necessarily interacting with this information on a daily or working within these settings about the need to embrace the refugees, for instance, but also on how to coexist with them? It is very, very important because I've seen and I have learned over time that even from experience, information surrounding refugees is very limited to media. It is not adequately available for us to access and tell real stories. But if we are going to tell real stories, we need to tell both the stories of success and also the stories of challenges. Because many times, when we look at the stories that are out there for media, whether through traditional, conventional media, or even now digital media, which is very prevalent in the times that we live, the stories that we are telling are really rosy and nice. These refugees are receiving this much, and we are also committing these stories so much to being numbers as opposed to humanizing them. How do we tell humanized stories about these people? For us to be able to do that as media, we need as adequate information as possible. Because in any normal setting, even minus you being a refugee, you experience both the positives and the negatives. Many times, when we are tasked to report stories, we are either tasked to report stories for accountability, for implementing partners, obviously for their donors and every other partner that is involved as stakeholders. I think we need to be a bit more realistic with ourselves and tell stories beyond that. I've just heard her talking about water being a challenge there. Those are not stories that we hear ordinarily every day about refugee settings, but they're real stories. And this is not for us to say that anybody is to be blamed about it, because the crisis that surrounds refugees and the settings they are in is not anything that anybody is ever really appropriately prepared for. Even the policy makers that are in the room today, I'm sure they've kept evolving policies after being educated on the challenges that are actually on ground. As we embark on this journey, as we positively tell the stories, can we make as much knowledge and information about this setting, about this situation available to journalists? Can we do trainings on reporting on refugees? I'll tell you, a couple of months ago, we were working with Adriana and her team for about 6 months, doing a very good project that brought life, that humanized refugees, a talent search in about 5 settlements. But even for the team that I was working with, there is language and lingo that they're not aware has since, for instance, shifted, that we're not calling them camps anymore, we are calling them settlements. They need to understand, why are we shifting from calling them camps to settlements? Because we are humanizing the situations. Beyond their circumstance, they're human beings at the end of the day. But the media has got to be educated on these things. this is very unique and we must handle it like that. I think what we need to do more than ever is to create better synergies and better partnerships between the media, government, and the implementing partners, for us to be able to have more conversations through trainings and workshops so that the media is better enabled to report accurately on the issues to do with refugees. We need also to think about things like having joint platforms where media can quickly access real-time data, success stories, and critical updates, because the better we are armed with information, the better we are going to provide it to the public and report more accurately. But I also think that the implementing partners and government, perhaps here in the room, we should be able to give a voice to the local stories, to the refugees themselves. And in as much as media should be able to amplify those, we should be able to allow them to have a voice on their own. LWF did very great during the recent talent search that we partnered to produce with them. And it was a beautiful thing to see that these are real people living among us with unfortunate circumstances that they didn't choose, but they still have a voice, they still have talent, they still have something to look forward to and showcase. So I think it is important that beyond us highlighting their plight and the success stories that the implementing partners and government are pushing, which is a beautiful thing, they need to have a voice of their own. We need to hear from them more often. Risk protecting them within the regulations that are provided. Thank you.
Thank you.